I'm 29 years old, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, rehearsing my surprised face for tomorrow's party, and I have no idea that in less than 24 hours, my entire existence will be dismantled in front of 75 people who claim to love me. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how my 30th birthday became the day I discovered everything I believed about my life was a carefully constructed lie. Let me tell you something about surprise parties. They're supposed to be filled with joy, right? Lauder cake. People who actually want to celebrate you. But what if I told you that the surprise party my parents threw for me wasn't a celebration at all? What if I told you it was an ambush, a public trial, a calculated destruction of everything I thought I knew about who I was? And what if I told you that the man who saved me that night was someone my parents swore had been dead for 30 years? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind to 3 weeks ago, to the phone call that started everything. I was in the new Microsoft Word document. Docs 599 lines. Docs write a story that I want to generate a voice from A for my YouTube channel related to Read It stories, so give as lengthy as I can make video of 60 minutes. Must consists of 6,000 plus characters. Here are the instructions, you have to follow them strictly. Write a high retention, emotionally engaging story based strictly on the following video title. You must follow every rule below without exception. The story must be long enough for a 60-minute video using AI voice over, or use US English only. For write in a natural spoken narration style using commas, pauses, and punctuation optimized for AI voice generation. Begin with a powerful 15-second hook that is directly related to the title and instantly triggers curiosity, urgency, fear, shock, or controversy. Every single line must be interesting, emotionally charged, and retention-focused, constantly increasing curiosity, tension, surprise, or concern. Do not include headings, timestamps, labels, bullet points, scene markers, or formatting of any kind. Output pure narration only. Ready for direct copy-paste into an AI voice tool. Do not drag any topic for too long. Keep the pacing tight and fast while packing the entire story with valuable, high-impact information. Avoid boring explanations, obvious facts, generic definitions, or filler content. I have attached a file containing key points from my competitors. Don't use them as it is, just take hint from them and craft a story for 60 minutes. Use different name of girl. As my previous videos don't have good average view duration, so make sure every line should create curiosity, suspense of what happened next to engage the viewers. This story is about the 30th birthday, so choose age accordingly. Show more her 17. I am 29 years old, and tomorrow night, I'm walking into what I think is my surprise birthday party. But what I don't know is that my parents have turned it into a public execution, with 75 witnesses, a DNA test, and a $500,000 invoice with my name on it. But here's the twist they never saw coming. Standing in the shadows of that room is a man they told me died before I was born, and he's about to blow their entire world apart. My name is Riley, and this is the story of how my 30th birthday became the night I discovered that every single thing I believed about my life, was a lie. 3 weeks ago, I was finishing up my shift at Memorial Hospital, checking vitals on a patient in the cardiac unit, when my phone started buzzing in my scrub pocket. It was my younger sister, Madison, and she never called unless she needed something. Money for her latest Instagram sponsorship attempt, a ride because her car was in the shop again, or just someone to complain to about how hard it was being an influencer with only 48,000 followers. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Riley, oh my God, you have to act surprised, okay? Madison's voice came through in that breathless way she had, like everything was the most dramatic thing that had ever happened. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but Mom and Dad are throwing you a huge surprise party for your 30th. Like huge. They've invited everyone, Aunt Carol, Uncle James, literally every cousin we have, even the ones from Texas we haven't seen in like a decade. I stood there in the hospital hallway, holding my phone, trying to process what she'd just said, a party. For me, in 29 years my parents had never thrown me a birthday party, not one, not for my sweet 16, not for my 21st, not even when I graduated from nursing school with honors and landed a job at one of the best hospitals in the state. But Madison, her 21st birthday had been a $17,000 event at the Rosewood Estate, complete with a live band, a professional photographer, and a cake that looked like it belonged in a museum. Dad had given a speech that night about how proud he was of his little star, how Madison was going to change the world with her creativity and passion. My 21st birthday. We went to Olive Garden. Mom ordered the cheapest pasta on the menu and split it with me. When the check came, Dad looked at me and said, "Times are tough right now. Kiddo, you understand, right?" I understood. I always understood. "Are you sure about this?" I asked Madison, keeping my voice low because patients were trying to sleep. "Mom and Dad don't really do parties for me, I know, right? That's what makes it so special." Madison giggled. "They said turning 30 is a milestone. They want to make it memorable. You have to promise you'll act shocked when you walk in, okay?" I worked so hard to keep this secret. "I'll act shocked, I promised." After we hung up, I sat down in the break room and stared at my cold coffee. Maybe things were finally changing. Maybe after 29 years of being the responsible one, the invisible one, the one who didn't need attention or celebration, they were finally seeing me. I let myself believe it. God help me, I actually let myself believe it. The next 2 weeks were strange. Dad called me out of nowhere to ask about work, which he never did. He wanted to know about my schedule, what time I got off on Friday, if I had any plans for the weekend. His voice had this weird quality to it, too smooth, too practiced, but I told myself he was just being sentimental about my birthday. Then, 3 days before the party, I got an email that changed everything. Or so I thought at the time. I'd been waiting 5 years for this email. 5 years of extra shifts, of staying late, of taking on the hardest patients, the ones nobody else wanted. 5 years of proving myself over and over again. The subject line read charge nurse position. Interview request. I'd applied for the head charge nurse position in the ICU, a role that came with better pay, better hours, and actual recognition for all the work I'd been doing. My supervisor, Karen, had told me 2 weeks earlier that the hospital board was seriously considering me. But they needed one thing, a professional recommendation letter from someone with connections to the hospital's administration. "Your father used to be on the hospital board, didn't he?" Karen had said. "Richard Morrison. A letter from him would basically seal the deal for you." So I called Dad, nervous, hopeful, expecting him to brush me off like he usually did. But he didn't. A recommendation letter. He'd sounded almost pleased. "Of course, sweetheart. I'd be honored to write one for you. You've worked so hard, you deserve this." I nearly cried. He'd never said anything like that to me before. "I'll give it to you at your birthday party," he continued. "Make it special, you know. A father presenting his daughter's future to the whole family. It'll be a moment you'll never forget." Something about the way he said it felt off, too theatrical, too rehearsed, but I pushed the feeling away. Maybe he was just being sentimental. 30 was a big milestone after all. "That sounds perfect, Dad. Thank you, anything for my girl," he said. My girl. He'd never called me that before. That was always Madison's title. Madison was Daddy's girl, Daddy's little princess, Daddy's shining star. But for the first time in my life, I was his girl too. I hung up feeling lighter than I had in months. The promotion, the party, the letter, everything was finally falling into place. I even went shopping for a new dress. Something I never did because I was always trying to save money, always sending money home to help my parents with bills, always putting everyone else first. But this time I bought myself a dress. Deep emerald green, elegant, professional. I wanted to look put together, worthy of the recognition I was finally getting. I had no idea I was dressing for my own funeral. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything that was about to change. The new position would mean I could finally afford my own place, not just this tiny studio apartment with paper, thin walls and a radiator that only worked half the time. I could stop living paycheck to paycheck. I could stop sending half my salary home to parents who never seemed to appreciate it. I'd been sending them $500 every single month for the past 7 years. That was $42,000. $42,000 I'd never asked to be paid back, never even mentioned. Because that's what family does, right? You help when you can. Meanwhile, Madison lived in their basement rent-free, had never paid a bill in her life. And Dad had just given her $9,000 last month to invest in ring lights and camera equipment for her social media career. When my car broke down 2 years ago and I asked to borrow $1,500 for a down payment on a used Toyota, Dad had looked at me like I'd asked him to donate a kidney. "You're a strong, independent woman, Riley. You'll figure it out." So I figured it out. I took out a predatory loan with a 23% interest rate, worked double shifts for 6 months straight, and paid it off myself. But I didn't let myself think about that anymore. Tomorrow was going to be different. Tomorrow, they were throwing me a party. Tomorrow, everything would change. I fell asleep around 3 in the morning, and when I woke up, it was the day that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. I spent the entire day getting ready. I did my hair, my makeup, I put on that green dress and a pair of heels I'd borrowed from my coworker Jessica. I even bought a gift for my parents, which I know sounds insane. Bringing a gift to your own birthday party. But that was me, always giving, always trying to earn love that should have been freely given. The gift was a leather-bound photo album I'd spent 2 weeks putting together, filled with family pictures from over the years, pictures of holidays, vacations, moments I'd carefully curated to show us as a happy family. Looking back now, I can't believe how desperate I was. How pathetically desperate. At 6:30, I got a text from Madison. Party starts at 7, don't be late, and remember to act surprised. I grabbed my keys, grabbed the photo album, took one last look in the mirror, and headed out. The restaurant was called the Sterling Room. This upscale place downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and chandeliers that probably cost more than my car. I'd never been inside before. My parents had taken Madison there for her college graduation dinner, but when I graduated nursing school, we'd gone to Applebee's. I parked in the lot and sat there for a moment, watching other cars pull in. I recognized Uncle James's truck, Aunt Carol's SUV, vehicles belonging to cousins and family friends I hadn't seen in years. They really did invite everyone, I thought. They really did this for me. I checked my reflection one more time in the rearview mirror, practiced my surprised face. Oh my gosh, you guys. I can't believe this. And then I walked toward the entrance. A hostess in a crisp black uniform greeted me at the door. You must be Riley Morrison. Your family is waiting in the Sapphire Room. Right this way. My heart was pounding as I followed her down a hallway, past other diners, toward a set of double doors at the back of the restaurant. I could hear voices inside, lots of them, murmuring, talking. I took a deep breath, put on my biggest smile, and pushed open the doors. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No balloons, no streamers, no chorus of surprise. Just 75 people turning to stare at me in perfect, synchronized silence. Nobody was smiling. I stood there in the doorway, my rehearsed expression of shock frozen on my face, and scanned the room. Uncle James sat at a table near the front, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Aunt Carol clutched her purse like it was a shield, her eyes darting away from mine the second I looked at her. Cousins I hadn't seen since childhood watched me with expressions I couldn't read, pity mixed with something else. Something that looked almost like disgust. There was no cake, no decorations, no birthday anything. Just a long table at the front of the room, positioned like a judge's bench in a courtroom. And behind that table stood my parents. Dad held a microphone in one hand. Mom stood beside him, her face twisted into an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, hard, almost triumphant. On the table between them sat a single red folder. Riley. Dad's voice boomed through the speakers, formal and icy. Sit down, we need to talk. My legs moved on autopilot. I lowered myself into a chair that had been placed facing the table, facing them, like a defendant about to be sentenced. That's when I saw the woman in the corner with the professional camera. Not a party photographer, a videographer, the kind you hire for depositions and legal proceedings. They were recording this. Whatever this was, they wanted it documented. Dad, I started, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. What's going on? Where's the cake? Where's... He cut me off by opening the red folder. Riley Morrison, do you know why we invited 75 people here tonight? The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. My birthday? The words sounded pathetic even to me. No. Dad shook his head slowly, deliberately. To serve as witnesses. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Witnesses to what? Dad pulled a document from the folder, his hand steady like he'd practiced this moment 100 times. This, he held it up for everyone to see, is a DNA test. Your mother and I submitted samples 3 months ago, along with a sample of your blood that we obtained from your last physical exam. My heart stopped. The results came back conclusive, he continued, his voice echoing through the speakers. You are not our biological daughter. The room exploded into whispers, gasps. Somebody near the back saying, I knew it, I always knew something was off about her. What? I gripped the armrests of my chair. That's impossible, you're not ours, Riley. Mom stepped forward and her face was ugly with something I'd never seen before, rage mixed with satisfaction. You never were. We took you in, we raised you. We fed you, clothed you, educated you. We gave you everything. And how did you repay us? Dad's voice rose. By complaining to your friends, by talking behind our backs. By acting like we were never good enough for you, like you deserved more than what we gave you. We have witnesses. Dad gestured to the crowd. People who've heard you, who've listened to you badmouth this family, who've watched you act ungrateful year after year. My mind was reeling. Yes, I'd vented to friends. Who doesn't? I'd told Jessica at work that I felt invisible in my family, that I wished my parents would acknowledge my accomplishments the way they acknowledged Madison's. But I'd never slandered them, I'd never lied. Dad reached into the folder again and pulled out a stapled packet of papers. This, he said, his voice dripping with practiced authority, is an itemized list of every single expense we incurred raising you. Food, clothing, housing, education, medical care, everything. He paused for effect, letting the silence build. The total comes to $537,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. And we want it back. Before I could even process what he'd just said, Mom lunged toward me. Her fingers closed around my wrist, and she pried my car keys out of my hand before I even understood what was happening. This car, she held up my keys like evidence in a trial. You bought with money from a job you only got because your father had connections at that hospital. Technically, it belongs to us. I paid for that car myself. My voice cracked. Every single payment, I have the loan documents. Your salary comes from a hospital where Richard was on the board for 15 years. Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. Without him, you'd be nothing. You owe us everything you have, Riley. Everything. I looked around desperately, searching for one person, just one person who would stand up for me. 75 relatives. 75 people I'd shared holidays with, people who'd told me they loved me, people I'd sent birthday cards to, people I'd helped move, people I'd babysat for. Not one of them moved. Uncle James actually nodded. She's got a point, Riley. Your father opened a lot of doors for you. That's not how this works, I started to say. But then Madison appeared at my side, and she was holding her phone, and the little red light in the corner told me everything I needed to know. She was live streaming this. Smile for the camera, sis. Madison's voice was gleeful, almost giddy. This is incredible content. My followers are going absolutely insane right now. Family drama, DNA reveals, public confrontation. This is gold. Madison, stop. Turn that off. Shut. Keep talking. The comments are blowing up. Everyone wants to know what happens next. I looked at her phone screen. Thousands of viewers. Comments scrolling faster than I could read. Oh my god, this is insane. That poor girl. The parents are psychotic. This has to be fake. But it wasn't fake. This was my life. Being broadcast, being dissected, being destroyed in real time. And my own sister was the one holding the camera. Something inside me shifted in that moment. Some part of me that had been bending and breaking for 29 years finally snapped into place. I stopped being the scared little girl they expected me to be. I took a breath, then another, and I stood up. Dad, I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs, I have a question. He frowned. This wasn't part of his script. What? You said I'm not your biological daughter, that you have DNA proof. That's correct. I leaned forward slightly. So who are my biological parents? Silence. They abandoned you, Mom said quickly. They didn't want you. We saved you from. That's not what I asked. I kept my voice level, calm, the same voice I used with panicking patients in the ICU. I asked who they are. They're dead. Dad's answer came too fast, too rehearsed. Both of them. Car accident. Years ago. Interesting. I felt a strange calm washing over me. So if they're both dead, whose DNA did you use to prove I'm not yours? Dad's mouth opened. Nothing came out. DNA tests require comparison samples, I continued, letting my nursing education take over. You can't just test my blood in a vacuum and declare I'm not related to you. You need something to compare it to. So whose DNA did you use? Dad, did you exhume a body? Did you have samples stored for 30 years? The crowd shifted. I saw confused looks, furrowed brows. The logic was landing. That's not. Dad stammered. That's not your concern right now. What matters is, I said quietly, is one of my biological parents not actually dead? And that's when I saw him. A man standing in the far corner of the room, near the emergency exit, partially hidden in shadow. He wasn't dressed like my relatives. His suit was expensive, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. He looked about 60, with silver-streaked hair and a strong jawline, and his eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. I didn't recognize him, but something about him felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. Next to him stood a younger woman in a business suit, clutching a manila folder. Who is that? I pointed toward the corner. Dad's face went pale. Nobody. That's nobody. Focus on what matters here. You need to sign this document. He slid a contract across the table. I could see the header from where I stood. Promissory note. This legally obligates you to repay $537,000 over 15 years. Monthly payments of roughly $3,000. You'll sign it now. In front of everyone, Gerald. The man's voice cut through the room like a knife, deep, calm, commanding. The entire restaurant went silent. My father actually flinched. Not yet, the man said, his tone almost gentle. Let her finish asking her questions. Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Mom grabbed his arm, her knuckles white. Who let him in? Mom's voice was shrill, panicked. Gerald, who let him in? But neither of them answered, and the stranger just kept watching me. And something in his expression shifted, something that looked almost like hope. Oh my God, Madison's voice shattered the silence. Guys, something is happening. This is getting so good. She was still filming, still narrating for her thousands of viewers like this was reality TV. 3 months ago, someone contacted Dad about Riley not being their real daughter. I heard her say to the camera, I think it was a lawyer or something. They've been planning this whole reveal ever since. Madison, Mom shrieked. Turn that off right now. But it was too late. I turned to face my sister. 3 months ago, someone contacted Dad. Madison's eyes went wide as she realized she'd made a mistake. I wasn't supposed to say that. Who contacted him, Madison? I took a step toward her. If my biological parents are both dead, who reached out 3 months ago? She backed away, phone still recording. I don't know, I just saw an email on Dad's computer. Some law firm. Something about end of agreement and mandatory disclosure. Brianna, I swear to God. Dad lunged for her phone, but I moved faster. End of agreement. I blocked his path. What agreement? What mandatory disclosure? The crowd was riveted now. Madison's live stream had thousands of comments flooding in. Everyone was watching. Everyone was witnessing. There's no agreement, Mom shrieked. She's lying. Madison, tell them you're lying. But Madison's face told me everything I needed to know. Someone had contacted my parents 3 months ago. Someone with lawyers. Someone forcing them to disclose something they'd kept hidden for 30 years. I turned toward the corner where the stranger stood. He'd moved closer, maybe 10 feet away now. And when I really looked at him, I saw it. My eyes. He had my eyes. The same unusual green color I'd always wondered about. Because neither of my parents, neither Gerald nor Linda Morrison, had eyes like mine. You're not dead, I whispered. The man shook his head slowly, tears streaming down his face. No, sweetheart, I'm not. The room erupted into chaos. People were shouting. Phones were coming out of pockets and purses. Madison was narrating breathlessly to her live stream. And my parents looked like they were about to be sick. Allow me to introduce myself. The man's voice filled the room with an authority that demanded attention. Security, Dad croaked. Someone call security. This man is trespassing. But nobody moved. Nobody even reached for a phone. My name is Jonathan Hayes, the man said, his eyes never leaving mine. And I am Riley Morrison's biological father. The explosion of sound was deafening. Gasp shouts, the clatter of chairs as people stood up to get a better view. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I stared at him. You're supposed to be dead. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Is that what they told you? I nodded, unable to speak. I have never been dead, Riley. His voice softened, cracked slightly. I've been waiting 30 years for this day. 30 years. He's lying, Mom screamed, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering. He's a con man, a fraud. Gerald. Tell them. Tell everyone he's lying. But Dad just stood there frozen, his face the color of old newspaper. Gerald, Jonathan turned to face my father, and something cold entered his tone. Would you like to tell her the truth? Or should I silence? Jonathan nodded slowly as if he'd expected this. Very well. He turned back to me, and his expression softened again. Your mother, your biological mother, her name was Elizabeth Hayes. We were together for 3 years. When she became pregnant with you, her family, he paused, composing himself, her family disapproved. They felt we were too young, that I wasn't established enough. They forced her to give you up for adoption. Then how? I couldn't finish the question. The Morrisons agreed to adopt you under very specific conditions, Jonathan continued, his eyes flickering toward my parents. Conditions they were extremely well compensated for. What conditions? Jonathan reached into his jacket and pulled out an old photograph. He held it out to me with both hands, like an offering. I took it with shaking fingers. The woman in the photo was young, maybe 22, with my face, my eyes, my smile. She was laughing at something off camera, her hand resting on a barely visible baby bump. This was your mother, Jonathan said softly, and she loved you more than anything in this world. The woman in the business suit, Jonathan's assistant apparently, stepped forward and handed him a thick folder. Gerald. Jonathan's voice turned cold again. You just demanded that Riley repay you $537,000 for the cost of raising her. That's right? Dad's voice was weak, defensive. Every penny we spent on her. Interesting, Jonathan opened the folder. Because according to my records, you've already been paid. He pulled out a stack of papers, dozens of them, and held them up for the room to see. Bank statements, he announced. Wire transfer records. $2,000. Every single month for 29 years. He let that sink in, starting in 1996, ending just 3 months ago. When you stopped accepting payments because you knew I was coming. He paused. That's $696,000, Gerald. Significantly more than you're demanding from Riley tonight. The crowd stirred. Confusion rippled through the room. What is that? Uncle James stood up. What are those papers? Wire transfer records. Jonathan handed a stack to the nearest table. Feel free to examine them. Every payment is documented. Dates, amounts, account numbers. And Linda Morrison's signature, confirming receipt of each and every payment. Mom made a strangled sound like a wounded animal. I turned to face her. You received money for 29 years. $2,000 a month. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Answer me. It was compensation, she finally screamed, for raising someone else's unwanted brat. For taking in a child nobody wanted, unwanted. Jonathan's voice cut through the room like a blade. I begged to keep her. I begged to raise her myself. But Elizabeth's family, your family, Linda, they had conditions. They demanded I stay away until Riley turned 30. They demanded I let you raise her. And I agreed because I thought, he paused, his voice breaking, I thought you would love her. I thought you would give her the life she deserved. He looked at me, tears streaming openly down his face. I'm sorry, Riley. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. Jonathan reached into his jacket one more time and pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed at the edges, the paper soft from years of handling. Your mother passed away when you were 6 years old, he said, his voice trembling. Breast cancer. She fought for 18 months, but in the end, he couldn't finish. Before she died, she wrote you a letter. She gave it to me and made me promise to keep it safe until you were old enough to understand. He held out the envelope with both hands. I took it. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in elegant handwriting that felt somehow familiar. Like a song I'd heard in a dream. My darling Riley, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you, and I'm so sorry. I want you to know that you were never unwanted. You were never a mistake. From the moment I knew you existed, you became the most precious thing in my life. Your father, Jonathan, is the best man I've ever known. I was too young, too scared to fight for us, and that is my greatest regret. Please don't blame him for not being there. He wanted you. He has always wanted you. Live your life with courage, my darling. Be strong, be kind, and know that wherever I am, I'm watching over you. I love you. I will always love you. Mom. I couldn't see through the tears. The letter blurred and disappeared as I pressed it against my chest. 75 people watched in absolute silence. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel alone. I need to say something. A voice cut through the quiet. Aunt Carol stood up, clutching her purse against her chest. Dorothy, sit down, Mom hissed. No. Carol shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I've kept your secrets for 30 years, Linda. I can't do it anymore. She opened her purse and pulled out a small stack of papers, yellowed, wrinkled, some of them torn. These are receipts, she said, her hands trembling. Bank receipts. Every month, Linda asked me to pick up the wire transfers in cash. She told me it was from a life insurance policy that Elizabeth's family had left. She told me the money was for Riley's future. Carol's voice broke. I believed her. For 20 years, I believed her. Carol, Mom's voice was venomous. Shut your mouth right now. I found out the truth 5 years ago, Carol continued, her voice growing stronger. I saw Jonathan's name on one of the transfers. I confronted Linda. She told me if I said anything, she'd tell everyone she faltered about my past, about things I'd done. She blackmailed me into silence. I looked at my adoptive mother and saw her for what she really was. You knew, I said slowly. All this time, you knew I had a father who wanted me, who was paying to make sure I was cared for, and you let me believe I was unwanted. We raised you, Mom spat. We fed you. We gave you a roof over your head. With his money. I gestured toward Jonathan. You raised me with his money, and you still treated me like I was nothing. I stood up, finally steady on my feet. You didn't want $500,000 from me tonight. My voice was cold, clear. You wanted to destroy me before he could tell me the truth, before I could find out what you really are. Mom had no answer because there was no answer. Dad made one last desperate attempt. Riley, listen to me. His voice had changed. Softer now, almost pleading. We're still your family. We raised you. We love you. This was just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I almost laughed. You staged a public trial. You demanded I pay you back for raising me. You threatened my career. You had Madison live stream my humiliation to thousands of people. I shook my head. That's not a misunderstanding, that's a betrayal. But we're still your parents, Dad insisted. No. The word came out calm, final. You're not. You're the people who took money to raise me, then treated me like a burden. You're the people who lied to me for 30 years. You're the people who turned my birthday into an ambush. I turned to face the crowd, all 75 of them. I'm not asking any of you to choose sides. This is between me and them. But I will say this. Not one of you stood up for me tonight. Not when they called me ungrateful. Not when they took my keys. Not when Madison shoved a camera in my face. Silence. Eyes dropping to the floor, I won't forget that. Finally, I turned to Jonathan. Mr. Hayes, I stopped, corrected myself. Jonathan, I need time. I can't call you Dad. Not yet. This is all too much. His eyes were wet, but he nodded. I've waited 30 years, he said softly. I can wait a little longer. I walked toward the door. Mom tried to block my path. You can't just leave. We're not finished. Yes, I looked her in the eye. We are. I stepped around her and walked out of the Sterling room. And I never looked back. I wasn't there for what happened after I left, but Carol told me everything later. And Madison's live stream, which she apparently forgot to turn off, captured every brutal second. The moment the door closed behind me, the room erupted into chaos. Gerald turned on Linda. You knew. You knew about the money this whole time and never told me. I was protecting us, Linda screamed back. Protecting our family. By lying to me for 30 years, by taking money behind my back, you never asked questions. You just spent whatever I gave you. The relatives scattered like cockroaches when the lights come on. Uncle James tried to calm Gerald down and got shoved for his trouble. Carol gathered her things and quietly slipped out a side door, and Madison stood frozen, watching her follower count drop in real time. Within 12 hours, her live stream had been clipped, edited, and shared across every social media platform. But not the way she'd wanted. Toxic family exposes themselves live. Worst parents ever caught on camera. Influencer documents own family's downfall. The comments were savage. Imagine exploiting your sister's trauma for views. This girl is disgusting. Unfollowed immediately. Brands she'd been negotiating with pulled out. Sponsorships vanished. Her authentic family content suddenly looked very different in context. As for Jonathan, he left the restaurant quietly, without confrontation. He didn't need revenge. He'd come with truth, and truth had done its work. That night, sitting alone in my studio apartment, I read Elizabeth's letter 19 times. I traced her handwriting with my fingertips. I studied the photograph Jonathan had given me, my mother at 22, laughing, her hand on her belly where I was growing. I cried until my throat was raw, until I couldn't breathe, until my entire body ached. But somewhere beneath the grief, beneath the shock and betrayal, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The kind of hope that comes from finally understanding who you really are. 4 days later, I was called into the hospital director's office. I walked in expecting the worst. Gerald had promised to destroy my career. He had 15 years of connections on the hospital board. Dr. Patricia Williams sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. Please, sit down, I sat. Waited, Riley. I'm going to be direct with you. She folded her hands on the desk. I received an email from Richard Morrison 4 days ago, demanding that we terminate your employment immediately. My stomach dropped. He claims you're unfit for the charge nurse position, that you have severe character issues. He also attached a video file, said it would prove his point. I closed my eyes. The live stream. Of course. I watched it. Dr. Williams continued. I can explain. I started. Riley. Her voice was gentle. I watched you stand in front of 75 people who were actively trying to destroy you. I watched you keep your composure, ask intelligent questions, and walk out with your dignity completely intact. I opened my eyes. I also received a phone call this morning. She leaned back in her chair. From Jonathan Hayes. Do you know who he is? My biological father. He owns 4 hospitals in the Tree State area, Dr. Williams said, including 2 that we partner with regularly. Oh God. He called to tell me explicitly that he would not, under any circumstances, be interfering in any employment decisions regarding you. He said, and I quote, Riley deserves to succeed on her own merit, not because of who her father is. I couldn't speak. The charge nurse position is yours, Riley. You earned it fair and square. Williams stood and extended her hand. Congratulations. I shook her hand, barely processing what was happening. One more thing, she smiled slightly. Gerald Morrison's email didn't help your case, but it certainly damaged his reputation. The board has formally removed his name from our benefactor wall. We don't tolerate that kind of manipulation. Small victories, but that one felt pretty damn good. Over the next 2 weeks, Carol called me with updates. Gerald and Linda had filed for divorce. Not because of me or not entirely because of me. The night of the party, Gerald had gone through Linda's personal files. He'd found more than just the wire transfers from Jonathan. She'd been hiding money for years. Secret accounts, concealed purchases, a credit card with $63,000 in debt that Gerald never knew existed. Turns out your mother had been planning her exit for over a decade, Carol told me. Gerald's humiliation just gave her the excuse she needed to finally leave. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd staged a public trial to expose my betrayal. Instead, they'd exposed their own. Madison lost 32,000 followers in the first week alone. The comments that followed her everywhere were brutal. "Aren't you the girl who live streamed her sister's trauma? Imagine being that desperate for content. You're disgusting." She deleted her TikTok, her Instagram, started over with new accounts under a different name. Last I heard, she was doing wellness content now, posting about mindfulness and compassion. The irony, as they say, writes itself. Gerald tried to reach out once. A long email that somehow managed to apologize while still blaming everyone else. "I'm sorry for how things unfolded, but you have to understand the pressure I was under. The financial stress. Linda's deception. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I deleted it without responding. Linda called 17 times over the next month. I let every call go to voicemail. The messages got progressively more desperate. Angry, then pleading, then weepy. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I hated them. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I'd finally learned something it took me 30 years to understand. Some relationships can't be repaired. They can only be survived. 6 weeks after the party, I met Jonathan for coffee. Not at some expensive restaurant. Not at his corporate office. At a little place called the Daily Grind, a tiny coffee shop with mismatched furniture and burnt espresso. "Elizabeth and I used to come here," he explained, settling into a worn armchair. "Before everything fell apart. We'd sit in this exact corner and talk for hours about our future." I looked around at the chipped paint, the crooked picture frames on the walls. "It's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know." "Something bigger, fancier." Jonathan smiled. A sad smile that made him look younger somehow. "Money doesn't fix everything, Riley. Trust me, I learned that the hard way." He stirred his coffee slowly. "I could have fought harder for you. I could have hired better lawyers, ignored Elizabeth's family's demands, used my resources to force the issue." "Why didn't you?" "Because Elizabeth begged me not to." He looked at me, and I saw 30 years of regret in his eyes. She was dying and she was terrified. Terrified that if I pushed too hard, her family would take you somewhere I'd never find you. She made me promise to wait, to trust that the Morrisons would do right by you. They didn't." "No." His voice cracked. "They didn't. And I will never forgive myself for not seeing that sooner." We sat in silence for a while. "I don't know how to do this," I finally admitted. "I don't know how to have a father." Jonathan reached across the table and gently took my hand. "Neither do I, really." He smiled through tears. "But I'd like to try. If you'll let me." I didn't pull away. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's try." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't instant connection. It wasn't a Hollywood ending, but it was a start. 4 months later, I signed a lease on my own apartment. A real apartment, not a studio, not a place with paper-thin walls and broken radiators. A one-bedroom with hardwood floors and windows that actually opened, in a building with a doorman and a gym I'd probably never use. Every penny of the deposit came from my own savings, my own paychecks, my own hard work. Jonathan offered to help with the down payment. I said no. "I need to do this myself." I told him over coffee at the Daily Grind, which had become our weekly ritual. He nodded. "I understand," and he did. That was the thing about Jonathan. He understood that helping didn't mean rescuing. That being a father didn't mean controlling. He showed up on moving day anyway. Not with money or movers, but with a toolbox and a willingness to assemble furniture. We spent 8 hours putting together a bookshelf from IKEA. It came out slightly crooked. It was perfect. On my desk, I placed Elizabeth's photograph in a simple wooden frame. Every morning, I look at her face and see myself. The same eyes, the same smile, the same stubborn set to the jaw. I don't talk to Gerald anymore. Or Linda. Or Madison. Carol calls sometimes. She's the only Morrison I still speak to. She sends recipes, asks about work, never mentions the party. I think she feels guilty. I think she's trying to make amends in her own way. I let her, because forgiveness isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's just about allowing someone to try. Jonathan and I see each other every Sunday now. Sometimes we talk for hours. Sometimes we just sit in comfortable silence, reading newspapers, drinking coffee, existing in each other's presence. I'm learning who he is. His sense of humor, dry and unexpected. His love of old jazz music. His habit of underlining passages in books. His quiet strength. I'm not ready to call him dad yet. But I'm getting closer, Riley. He told me last week, I don't need a title. I just need you in my life, and that's enough. For now, that's more than enough. Looking back, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand why Gerald and Linda did what they did. A therapist I started seeing, Dr. Chen, helped me work through it. Gerald wasn't evil, she explained. He was terrified. His entire identity was built on control. Control of his finances, his family, his reputation. When Jonathan resurfaced, when the 30-year agreement ended, that control was threatened. He didn't attack you because he hated you. He attacked because he was scared of being exposed. It doesn't excuse what he did, I said. No, Dr. Chen agreed. But it explains it, and Linda was more complicated. She carried jealousy like a second skin. Jealousy of Elizabeth, the woman Jonathan truly loved. Jealousy of you, the living reminder of that love. Every time she looked at you, she saw the ghost of her own inadequacy. So she punished me for existing? In a way, yes, and me. What was my role in all of this? Dr. Chen leaned forward. You were a child who learned early that love had to be earned. That you had to be perfect, invisible, endlessly giving, just to deserve basic affection. That's not your fault, Riley. That's what they taught you. But I kept trying. I kept giving. Even when they showed me over and over that it would never be enough. Because you're a good person. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. And good people often make it easy for bad people to use them. I've thought about that a lot since then. The truth is, I did make it easy for them. 30 years of people-pleasing. 30 years of swallowing my needs, my anger, my hurt. 30 years of telling myself that if I just tried harder, loved harder, gave more, they would finally see my worth. They never did. Because people who use you don't want you to have worth. Your lack of worth is what makes them feel powerful. Here's what I want you to take from my story, if you take anything at all. Your value isn't determined by how others treat you. If someone consistently makes you feel like you're not enough, not good enough, not grateful enough, not worthy enough, that's information. That's data. Listen to it. Setting boundaries isn't revenge. It's self-respect. And sometimes, the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to keep. I'm 30 years old now. I have a career I'm proud of, an apartment that's mine, a biological father who's learning how to be present, and a future I'm building one day at a time. The Morrisons wanted to destroy me that night. They wanted to break me, humiliate me, reduce me to nothing. Instead, they set me free. And honestly, that might be the only real gift they ever gave me. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships, the ones that lift you up and the ones that tear you down, I hope you'll share it. And remember, you deserve people who choose you, not people who tolerate you, not people who use you. People who genuinely, actively, consistently choose you. Take care of yourselves. You're worth more than you know. I'm 30 years old now. I have a career I'm proud of, an apartment that's mine, a biological father who's learning how to be present, and a future I'm building one day at a time. The Morrisons wanted to destroy me that night. They wanted to break me, humiliate me, reduce me to nothing. Instead, they set me free, and honestly, that might be the only real gift they ever gave me. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships, the ones that lift you up and the ones that tear you down, I hope you'll share it. And remember, you deserve people who choose you, not people who tolerate you, not people who use you. People who genuinely, actively, consistently choose you. Take care of yourselves. You're worth more than you know.